Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. From the right, I'm Gary Polland.
And from the left, I'm David Jones.
This week on Red, White, and Blue, an in-depth discussion with United States Congressman Ted Poe, who represents the 2nd Congressional District of Texas. And one of the things we'll find out is where the 2nd Congressional District is, David.
Well, it looks like, it's my first question now.
Yeah, I know.
Otherwise, way to go to arrange everything for your your pal, Judge Poe here. So how many counties you have, how many people you have, and where are you going to end up after the redistricting mess, if it ever is going to end?
Well, it has ended for this election cycle. The legislature will have to draw a new map next year, have to pass federal court muster again for the next 8 years. My district no longer includes Jefferson County or Liberty County. It's entirely in Harris County. And it's about...
Really?
Yes. It's about 60% new people. It's a sort of a horseshoe around the county line. Goes Kingwood, Spring Branch, part of Garden Oaks, the Heights, Montrose down to the medical center. So it's a very, looks like a gerrymandered district that I had nothing to do with.
Ted Poe, I live in Garden Oaks. You could be my congressman?
I could be.
Scary thought.
I know that makes you nervous.
Save the mail. Save the mail. Now, but of course, what you will be doing in November is fighting the trends, the national trends, whatever they might be. One of those trends, as suggested by the recent Republican primary, is that you will have to be running with a guy at the top of the ticket who in Massachusetts kind of liked that, that mandate on health care. He passed cap and trade, and he was a pro-choice guy. Now, how do you think he's going to square the square?
Well,
or square that circle?
Whoever it is will be better than the current administration. Now, Governor Romney and I disagree on several things, and one of those, of course, is cap and trade. And the health care mandate, that is his issue in the state of Massachusetts. But whoever the nominee is, I will support that individual.
Do you think he's just, a guy with his finger in the wind? Because the Republican primary changes when you run nationally from when you run in Massachusetts, or do you think he's a person of conviction? What is your evidence?
It seems as though he has finally landed on some concrete principles. Hopefully he will stay with those principles when he's running against the President of the United States. That is some of the cynicism, skepticism of some conservatives nationally about the Governor Romney, because he tends to change his position, change his mind more than we would like.
Unlike the President of the United States, who, stands true blue on just about everything that he ever thought about.
Yeah, because Obama wants to be the dictator, and we don't need a Supreme Court, David. They should be overturning laws. I mean, that's the latest stunt from your president. I mean, I'm embarrassed for him.
He's
a law professor.
Don't get into the Supreme Court, or I'm going to ask him about that strip search decision if you continue along this line.
All right, then I'm going to ask. Congressman Poe serves on the Foreign Relations Committee.
Correct.
In the House, and is well versed in what's going on around the world. So, as we sit here tonight talking, Congressman Poe, what are the areas of the world that keep you up at night, worried about the future of freedom and the future of the United States?
Well, I serve on the terrorism subcommittee, and that's why I have spent quite a bit of time in Afghanistan and Iraq, seeing our troops and seeing that situation. On the world situation, we have two threats. The number one threat to the world is Iran, and number two is North Korea. And we should be mindful of that. Both of these individuals want to be the big guy on the block. Ahmadinejad, the little tyrant of the desert, wants to be the big player in the Middle East. And he not only is a threat to Israel, but to the other Arab countries like Saudi Arabia. But he's a world threat because he says, I want nuclear weapons. The first one's going to Tel Aviv. We should believe him when he says that. He is the number one threat to peace in the world.
But you don't have to take that 3 o'clock in the morning phone call. That belongs to the president and that administration. Now, how do you assess how they would handle that 3 a.m. phone call right now if Mr. Netanyahu says, okay, it's either us or it's you, but it's got to happen, and it has to happen soon. Who would answer that call, and what would they say?
Well, the line in the sand is different for Israel than it is for the United States. Israel's line is when Iran has nuclear weapon capability, that's their line in the sand. Our line in the sand is when they actually have nuclear weapons. There are two different, that's part of the disagreement between Netanyahu and the president.
How about Netanyahu and you? Or have you subcontracted out foreign policy to the Israelis?
Well, we have to prevent this from getting to that point. And my belief is the best hope for not just Israel, the United States, but also for Iran is a regime change in the country of Iran by the dissidents in Iran. We had our chance in 2009 when Ahmadinejad stole the election, murdered his own people in the streets. We remained blissfully silent. We should support the people of Iran. Let them know our quarrel is not with them, but with Ahmadinejad, and help them to change their regime. That's what we should be doing now. We shouldn't wait for that phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, because then we have some real difficult issues before us. I believe Israel is not going to take the chance that that Ahmadinejad will send that ballistic missile over to them. They're not going to take that chance. It's their survival.
Do you think this is going to come to a head before the November elections in the United States?
It may, but they may cross that line of nuclear weapon capability before the election in November.
Any insight into what the administration would do?
I don't know what they would do. I have listened to Secretary Clinton on this issue. She's very strong. I respect her a great deal, and I don't think that we would get to a point where we would let them fire that first missile. But I can't speak for the administration. But they need to know that Israel needs to know that we will support them. I'm not so sure that they know that. At least they're not convinced. And that's an unfortunate situation, because now they may be in a situation where they are collecting information and intelligence and they're not sharing it with us.
You agree, don't you, with the Secretary of Defense that just left? I forget his name now. Gates, I guess it was. Who's just left?
Gates.
Yeah, who said that any Secretary of Defense in the future that wants to send troops to the Middle East has lost his mind.
Well, I don't think that's the answer either, is sending troops. You're talking about Iran, going into Iran. That's certainly not the answer, to have a ground war with them, for a lot of reasons. But one, this is not the Iran of old. This nation is a force to be reckoned with. And the more we learn about Iran, the more we understand that they are ready. They are assuming somebody's going to attack them. They're getting prepared for that.
So this President Obama that you in part will be running against as well, I mean, some could say the guy had a pretty successful, as far as, I'll concede, just for the sake of the argument, a successful term with people like me, with the stimulus that saved us from the Depression, with the health reform bill that has, according to your colleague Gene Green, put 550,000 seniors in a better position today. In your district, 4,000 small businesses are getting a tax credit in and around various congressional districts. Several 100,000 students or 26-year-olds on their parents' health care. That plus Don't Ask, Don't Tell, START treaty with Russia. I mean, this has been a successful administration, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I would not say that at all. The stimulus bill, we didn't have the money. It hasn't shown near the results that unfortunately Democrats like you claim. It slowed the economy, and we didn't have the money. We took the money forcibly from the taxpayers and tried to apply it to government programs. The economy does not stimulate by the government coming in and offering money to different entities, whether it's individuals or programs. The economy is stimulated when business has the opportunity to grow and use its own capital and to hire people. Businesses hire people. The government doesn't really make permanent jobs. It takes money from one sector and gives it to another sector. So on that issue, I couldn't disagree with you more. The stimulus did not work. The numbers, you can make the numbers mean anything that you want to mean. But the people I talk to in my congressional district, you mentioned the word Obamacare. It brings fear and trepidation into the hearts and souls of businessmen and businesswomen, and also individuals, because of a lot of reasons. One, we cannot afford it. It's a lot more money than the president promised us it would be. It's almost twice that much money. But more importantly, as the Supreme Court spent time on last week, unprecedented in our history, where the Supreme Court would spend 3 days on one particular piece of legislation, is the constitutionality of the individual mandate. which
Well,
I
if that
believe
goes down, then so does Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid.
Not
that's not
necessarily.
true.
Various other
No,
regulatory
it doesn't.
schemes that imposed on on commerce would arguably go down, or would be re-argued. We want to go back
This is
and
the end of the
relitigate
world
70
argument
years.
now.
Well,
worth of
that's not true.
Commerce.
The courts
jurisprudence?
have ruled on all of these other issues, but now they are talking about the Commerce Clause forcing you to buy a government product. It's not if you buy a product you got to buy theirs. It's you got to buy their product now, or else, or pay a fine, some type of sanction. That is the issue. Forcibly making Americans buy government products or being punished. And if the government can make you buy health care, the government can do anything. And it's an issue, David, in my opinion, even more than health care. It's the concept that we're moving to if the Supreme Court upholds the individual mandate.
You think they will?
No, I don't think they will. 5-4. I'll give you odds on it.
Okay,
5-4.
so Judge,
But let me finish this. It goes to the concept of unlimited government. It's going to unlimited government versus our framers thought, and my belief, and many Americans, maybe most, that government should be limited as opposed to unlimited. That's the issue before the Supreme Court. That's what all Obamacare is really about, more so than health care.
So let's assume the Supreme Court strikes down the Obamacare plan and it goes to its timely death, as it were. But the health system in the United States is still a train wreck, to be fair. Medicare, Medicaid, insurance rates running through the roof. We've got all kinds of issues. So what is the recommended solution when that goes down?
Well, you have to take them one at a time. Insurance rates have skyrocketed in the last few years. Businesses are finding their insurance rates are going up because insurance companies are getting prepared for Obamacare. And then, of course, the copay for the employees is going up as well. We just take each one of the issues and take and decide those. First, it's affordability. And one way you can do that is with competition. You can go to Louisiana and buy anything you want to, except health insurance. You can't. Why? Because it's against the law to go to Louisiana and buy, or any other state and buy health insurance. And that allows there to be a smaller pool of insurance providers. Let's have competition in the marketplace like we do everything else. And I think we ought to, right now, pass certain specific pieces of legislation rather than wait for it to be found unconstitutional. Another one is to keep kids on insurance till 25 and make insurance portable. In other words, you own it. You leave a job and go to another job, you shouldn't lose your insurance. And many times a person will leave one job, go to another job. It's the same insurance company, and they won't provide health care for that new employee because of a pre-existing condition that they know about in the other job.
What amazes me about you, though, Judge Poe, is that you're conceding that there are going to be 50, who knows, after the loss of the healthcare reform, 60, 70, million people without coverage. They are the freeloaders that you and I are paying for. Another $1,000 of our premium cost is paying for those folks. What is wrong with making them get into the healthcare system? They're going to get sick. They're going to die.
Well, people right now can get health care, and it's whether or not they have insurance or not. Those are two different issues. The health care bill, let's assume it's the greatest thing that ever happened. We cannot afford it. The country would go bankrupt just paying for Obamacare. So we can't afford that. So we have to fix the specific things. I think we ought to have, of course, a safety net for catastrophic injury, catastrophic illness, and for the poor. We ought to have a pool. We can fix that problem. So we take each one of those and fix them, and they're not going to cost us $1.5 trillion to set it up, fix the problems that we have. And then go back to a concept where we have patient and doctor, not patient, insurance company, government, and then doctor. And that is what's costing so much, those two in the middle. Patient-doctor driven instead of government-driven.
Or
do we really want to
politician-driven.
turn all America's health over to the government? If we like the compassion of the IRS and the competence of FEMA and the efficiency of the post office, we like the government controlling your health.
We're having political debates in Congress
Blue Cross
about
Blue
different
Shield.
procedures.
Let's turn it over to them, I guess, is what they're making decisions. They're
No,
making
the
a call
patients
now.
ought to make the decisions,
They
and
ought
the
to.
doctors, not the government. And right now, the Obamacare's whole premise is we are the government. We know better what type of procedure you should have, and we'll tell your doctor that's the procedure you will have. And that's the problem, one of the problems with it.
Of course, what if they're wrong?
The government? How can the government be wrong? It's
true.
the
I'm
government. We're here to
sorry.
help you.
So did you vote
Yes.
for the Ryan budget? And will the Ryan budget move us closer to the kind of fiscal sanity that you're saying we're going to be losing if we pass or if we continue down the road that Obama's going? Is his budget the answer?
It's part of the answer. We're out of the Congress is out of control. Federal government's out of control on spending. Ryan budget reins in spending over a period of time. I wish it would rein it in quicker, but we didn't get in this mess overnight. It's going to take a while to get out of it. That's the theory. I like the parts of the Ryan budget that make the tax system simpler. Goes to 2 tax brackets, 25% and 10%. It reduces the corporate income tax. The president has even talked about reducing the corporate income tax. Now that we have the highest corporate income tax in the world, maybe we should reduce it. So let companies keep more of their own money, and rather than the government taking it from them, they can hire people. Those are called jobs.
Are you worried about the loss of $4.6 trillion in revenue, according to the Ryan budget, made up for and paid for by loophole closing, which are not yet identified? I mean, if you can identify all the loopholes that Ryan is going to close to pay for the tax cuts that are going to lose $4.6 trillion in revenue, you have the rest of the program to do.
Well,
He's not telling you the truth, by the way.
Well, I don't agree with you on that at all.
There are no tax cuts in the budget?
There are tax cuts in the budget, but you have to factor in also the point that when you reduce taxes, you also promote growth because you have businesses keeping more of their own money rather than the government taking it from them, spending it on
Solyndra.
well, not just Solyndra, but this conference that GSA had out in Las Vegas, $800,000 conference.
But I'm sure it
that
was
kind
fun.
of stuff. Businesses can know more about their money. And I believe in that economic theory when businesses and individuals have more of their own money, they spend it, they put that money in the marketplace, and businesses have the ability then, when they have capital, to expand, and that's called, like I said, jobs.
Democratic alternative. Checking what's happened, the Senate, run by Democrats, hasn't passed a budget in years. I don't know how the government operates. I guess it's on continuing resolution. They just say no to every proposal the Democratic has. The Obama budget was dead on arrival. Didn't it get no votes in the House?
Very little publicity nationally about the president's budget. We voted on the president's concept budget. It failed 414 to 0. That means every Democrat voted against it, and all the Republicans. That shows you how the administration is out of tune with fiscal responsibility, where everybody in the House of Representatives said no to the president's concept budget. So there's got to be another way.
We're in a deep hole, though, Ted Poe. The economy lost 10 trillion jobs since 2007. Regained 3.5 10 billion, right? I'm sorry. Regained 3.5. Still have that $5 million hole, plus the new people that came in to the job market, another $4 or $5 million, and they're looking for work. Where do we find the growth and the right amount of time to get people back into work? Because they're saying it's 2017 at the rate of job growth we're having now before we ever get to even 5% unemployment. People are going to be hurting for a very long time unless you guys do something. And it seems to me you just can't say, well, we're just going to wipe out as much of the programs as we can that are actually paying people and writing checks to businesses who are living off of the government and employing people who are paying taxes.
Corporate and individual welfare.
We have a real problem ahead of us.
Well, we do have a problem, but we've proven the answer to the economy is not to spend more money; it's to spend less money. We've proven that the answer is not to continue to raise taxes on people that pay taxes. That stifles the economy. So maybe we ought to do the simple things that most Americans do, live within our means. Every day the federal government brings in $5 billion primarily by taxes, but it spends $9 billion. 5 in, 9 out. That's a lot of deficit every day. Somewhere we're going to have to cut spending and government waste, but the spending is the problem. And that's what responsibility of Congress is. We're cutting $100 billion here, $100 billion there. We're not making a dent in anything because the deficit and the debt continue to rise. There will be a day of reckoning. Hopefully, we will be able to stifle the spending spree, the habit, the addiction Washington has to spending. Congress has to rein it in.
Do you have hope that this is what one of the things the election will be fought over this November, is to getting control of runaway spending?
That $5 billion in, $9 out is the basis of all, to me, our economic problems in the United States. Spending more money than we have. That affects everything else. And I hope that it is an issue in the debate. And I look forward to the debates between the President and the Republican nominee and to articulate two different approaches to government.
Other hot spot around the world is actually our neighbor Mexico, where it seems like the government of Mexico is dysfunctional in the northern areas or the border areas. I know you're quite familiar with that. Kind of give us an update of what's going on there.
In the border region, some areas are better, some areas are worse, and some areas are a lot worse than they used to be. And contrary to what Homeland Security says, it's a very tough area to operate in as a citizen. Talked to a rancher 2 weeks ago who lives on the border. He says when he goes out on his ranch every morning, he puts on his bulletproof vest every day in fear of the drug cartels coming across his property. We have to recognize the issue is national security. Border security is the first thing we have to do. Unfortunately, people who aren't from the South, Southwest, living in other parts of the country, they don't know about it, not sure they care about it. That's why Henry Cuellar, Democrat, and myself have asked Secretary Leon Panetta to take some of that equipment coming back from Iraq that's already been paid for and send it down to the border. And we're talking about night vision equipment, some of the drones, and Humvees. In fact, the border sheriffs, 17 of them signed off on this letter. Almost all of them are Democrats because they understand that border security is a tremendous problem. The drug cartels are the problem. They're the enemy of Mexico, but they're the enemy of us too. And then the idea that our country, as part of our security, we would send 2,000 automatic weapons down to Mexico and give them to the drug cartels doesn't help our relationship with Mexico at all, especially since Mexican nationals have been murdered with those weapons that we watched go down to Mexico.
And that was authorized by the Obama administration,
It was
correct?
authorized by someone in the Justice Department. When Justice Holder was before our Judiciary Committee, I asked him, who made this decision in the Justice Department to send those weapons down to Mexico? I don't know. I don't know. And, he keeps saying, I don't know. It wasn't me, but I don't know who. So I asked him if there's a mole in the Justice Department who's smuggling weapons to foreign countries. But
you see the drug war from every perspective imaginable, and yet I haven't heard you say anything about the failures of the United States in terms of our consumption of drugs, the massive amounts of money that people are making off of drugs in this country. The demand is here, and that demand and that type of prohibition, it looks like it's destroying the country of Mexico. Well, thousands of people dying every year.
There is, eventually, this country must make a social decision to get off of drugs, and that includes prescription drugs that are abused. However, don't let people fool you. Mexico has their own drug problem and their drug addiction problem in Mexico as well. It's not that they don't have a problem and we do. Both countries have a problem because it is so prevalent and it's easy to obtain. Americans, starting with parents, have got to teach their kids that is not the answer. And that is the root of all of the money that's being made. It's the root of the violence. And I agree with you on that. That's the social thing that we have to do in this country. We're a consumer of illegal drugs, and shame on us for it.
Judge, you were a longtime district judge. You were a longtime prosecutor, familiar with the system. Many called you the best criminal courts judge we had in the nation, but certainly in Harris County. What's your take on a public defender that's been created, some say on a trial basis, to represent indigent defendants? You ran your court, you appointed lawyers when you were a judge. Do you think this is something we need?
In Harris County, the system has worked very well the way it is, with the courts being responsible, because the judge is eventually responsible for the representation of that criminal defendant that's in the courtroom. And it's worked well, I think, with the court-appointed system. It's been tweaked better to make it fair. A public defender system, it's just setting up a whole other bureaucracy that's paid for by the taxpayers that makes us feel good. Makes us feel good about having a public defender system. I'm not so sure they're that good. The anecdotal evidence I have heard from from lawyers and from some defendants' families is it's not that good a system. Costs too much, but it's a way of judges pushing their responsibility off on a government bureaucracy. I'm not a big fan of public defender systems in Harris County.
We only just have a few seconds, so Gary opened the door to criminal justice locally. How about that nice DA primary? How are you assessing? I think you once said that Pat Lackless is a very popular incumbent. You still think that? You got 15 seconds.
Well, I'm not getting in the DA's race. I know both Judge Likas and Judge Anderson. They're both judges. Know them both very well. I hope that people can see exactly what the issues are and make their decisions based on that, not on personality.
That was a good answer.
It was a good answer.
Thank you, Judge Poe, for being here. We invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Click on the local program bar, red, white, and blue. Read about our guests, watch the shows, along with our follow-up discussion about what you just heard. Until next time, get informed and get active.